Welcome to the AJ Awesome Show, a show about my favorite things. My name is AJ and my special guest for this episode is the icon, Sting. I hope you like the show! Hello everyone, my special guest for today needs no introduction, but I'll give him one anyway. I am really excited to have the honor of interviewing one of the best wrestlers of all time. He is a 6-time WCW World Heavyweight Champion, a 4-time TNA World Heavyweight Champion, a WWE Hall of Famer, and now a current wrestler with All Elite Wrestling. I couldn't name anything because then the video would be like an hour long. My guest for this episode is none other than the living legend, the icon, Sting.
How goes it, everybody? How goes it, AJ?
Good.
I like that background there. You're in the ring. I like it.
What was the moment you knew you wanted to be a wrestler?
You know, that's a good question because when I grew up, we didn't have pro wrestling on TV. I didn't even know what pro wrestling was, even into my young adult years. And so for me to end up in wrestling is kind of a miracle in itself. But I was approached by somebody years ago to get into pro wrestling. And again, I didn't even know what pro wrestling was. I didn't know who Hulk Hogan was. I co-owned a Gold's Gym in Southern California, and Hulk used to come and work out in the gym. People would freak out, and I didn't know what they were freaking out about. And that's Hulk Hogan, you know? And so it took me a minute, but I finally figured it out and ended up going through a wrestling camp and getting booked and got my first job in Tennessee all the way back in 1985, Thanksgiving Day. And so to answer the question specifically, you know, I guess somewhere in 1985 when we finished the camp and I knew that I was going to go off and do this, I had gone to the sports arena in Los Angeles to see my first wrestling match ever. And there was Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan, Big John Studd, the British Bulldogs, the Iron Sheik, Adrian Adonis, and so many other big names that were there. And, you know, it was packed all the way to the top, just a totally packed house. And the noise was deafening, especially when Hulk Hogan came out. I mean, it was like, you know, and I realized this pro wrestling thing is serious stuff. I'm going to give this a try. And so 34 years later, here I am.
You have such a great career too. So it is a miracle that he approached you to ask if you wanted to be a wrestler.
Yeah, you could say it was a miracle. Yeah. Yeah. Even though I had no intentions, no aspirations to be a pro wrestler. So I was looking for something, and here came pro wrestling, and the rest is history.
Were there any wrestlers that you looked up to as a mentor when you started training to be a wrestler?
You know, when I first started, there were more characters, you know, in the ring. And so I appreciated the characters. And one guy that I used to love to watch was Macho Man Randy Savage. I used to love his interviews. I thought he was a great wrestler. And I thought that he was very charismatic, and he was really, really good with the fans, and seemed to get a great reaction from wrestling fans and even from the wrestlers themselves. So, I'd say Macho Man is probably at the top of the list.
Do you have any advice for new wrestlers?
I do. You know, my experience over the years is when I first started, I saw a lot of the newer guys that were just getting started, and they thought that they were greater than they really were. And so they were a little too outspoken. Their mouths ran too much. And I think that a lot of the new guys are better off. It doesn't matter how great of an athlete you are, what kind of background you have, whether you're an ex-NFL player or an amateur wrestler that was a 4-time, you know, national champion. It doesn't matter. I think it's a good practice to keep your mouth shut and your ears wide open. learn the business, learn the psychology of it all, and learn from the guys who came before you and really literally paved the way, and learn how to respect those that came before you. I mean, I was taught that way when I got in, that the guys who came before me, you wanted to respect them and just keep your mouth shut and listen and learn, just learn how to be a pro wrestler. And so, yeah, I would say quick to listen, slow to speak.
How do you feel about people making comparisons between you and Darby Allin?
Well, I haven't had too much of that, but I kind of compared myself to him and him to me with my own mouth. Anyway, I said in a few interviews now that in so many ways he reminds me of me. And it's not just necessarily the paint on the face, but when I first started, I wanted to be different from some of the guys that came before me. I wanted to establish my own character, my own wrestling moves, my own psychology, and my own approach to having all my matches and even the gear that I wore and everything else. And I didn't want to be the status quo. And Darby Allin is just like that. I mean, he does not want to be status quo, and he has a mind that is perfect for the wrestling business, for wrestling in general. He has a great mind for wrestling, and his ability to wrestle, to me, is off the scale. Very innovative, very creative. He's a risk taker. Sometimes it's not even so calculated, but he does take risk, and he puts his body on the line when he goes out there, and he cares about what he brings to the ring, what he brings to the wrestling fan. So in those ways, we have a lot in common. And the pain.
He is very much of a risk taker, because in the match between you and Darby Allin versus Brian Cage and Ricky Starks, Darby Allin jumped off like a roof of the building.
Yeah. Well, I've seen video of him jumping off bridges into rivers and, like 100 feet. I mean, he's crazy. He's crazy.
What made you decide to come back to wrestling?
Well, I wanted to have one more match. It's really a match, I believe, a dream match for many wrestling fans all over the globe, and that would be, Sting Undertaker. That match there. I always wanted that match to happen. And in these last few years, because of COVID, the cinematic style kind of came about, and some are good, some are not so good. And I thought, Taker and I could have an unbelievable cinematic match. And for whatever reason, that just wasn't meant to happen. And so I got a call from Tony Khan, and he asked me if I'd be interested in coming back. And he asked me if I'd be interested in cinematic style matches. And I wasn't able to come to terms with WWE. So I left WWE and went to AEW in hopes that I would have the opportunity to do cinematic style matches and maybe even beyond. We'll see what happens here. And we had one and got good reviews from it. It's been really, really good.
It was one of the best matches on Revolution, in my opinion.
Well, coming from you, that means a whole lot. How would you compare it? Let me ask you a question. How would you compare it to other cinematic matches that have come out?
It was a lot crazier, with like jumping off buildings and hitting people with baseball bats and going through glass.
Pretty insane stuff, huh?
Yeah, it was a lot more insane than a lot of the other cinematic matches we've had.
Insane in a good way, right?
Yes.
Okay, we're good.
Did you feel nervous about returning to in-ring action, and what steps did you take to prepare yourself for your return?
I was somewhat nervous, and I think that can play out in a good way. I mean, I don't want to come in too overconfident or cocky, and you got to admit, at my age, and then to come, back into the ring after 5 years of being out of the ring and not having any kind of physical contact like that. um, I was a little like, how's this going to work? How's it going to feel? And I'll tell you, it didn't tickle. Okay. And I didn't recover as fast as I used to, but a lot of it kind of felt natural. It's like learning to ride a bike. You never forget how to ride a bike. Um, but, the first time my back hit the mat really hard, and the hardest that I got hit was that power bomb by Cage. And, I that got me. That rocked me a little bit. That rocked me a lot, actually. I don't know if I've ever been power bombed quite with so much force as Brian Cage's. So, but I was a little nervous, but worked out the nerves right away. Once you get moving and the red blood cells start pumping, then it all changes and goes away.
You have had many accomplishments and held many championships throughout your career. Do any of these accomplishments stand out to you as extra special?
The very first time I won the world title against Ric Flair, that was extra special for me. Not only was I wrestling one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, Ric Flair, but it was for the world title, and I actually got the win. And so many wrestlers in these 3 decades, more than 3 decades that I've been a pro wrestler, they've all wanted to be a world champion, or a TV champion, or a U.S. champion, or a tag champion, and most never get there. So to say that I got there really has a lot of impact for me. And I believed in the beginning that I had the ability to do it, but as sometimes you just don't know how things are all going to play out. And as I look back now, as like you said earlier, a 6-time world champion, that's incredible to me. So very grateful for those times.
What is something about you that would surprise your fans?
I know how to operate a backhoe. A backhoe is a tractor with a loader on the front, and then a big hoe on the back, a big scoop on the back as well. So I love tractoring. I love working outside. I'll even dig a hole and plant a tree. I love working. I love real estate. I started flipping homes before the term flipping homes was a term. And so I love that. Not just flipping homes and things like that, but also 1031 exchanges. And, that's buying and selling of dirt, basically, and saving from yourself from paying capital gains taxes and all that. So
When you do decide to retire for good, what do you want people to remember about you and your career?
well, I want them to remember a couple of things. I want them to remember that I gave it my all when I was in the ring, that I brought it all into the ring, and wanted to make sure that the fans left entertained, that the fans had something that they could bite into. And I wanted them to know that, my work ethic was there and that I cared about what they thought. But I also want them to know who I am as just the man behind the mask. A guy named Steve Borden, who gave his life to Jesus Christ and got saved and surrendered my life to Jesus Christ. And I realized that there's something beyond pro wrestling and beyond celebrity, and that is God Almighty. So I want them to remember that about me the very most, that, oh yeah, he was a pro wrestler, but he was a Jesus lover as well.
In your opinion, who are some of the best young talent at AEW?
Well, obviously Darby Allin. Darby Allin's up there for sure. Sammy Guevara is unbelievable to me. Orange Cassidy cracks me up, and not only does he crack me up, but he has unbelievable ability to wrestle as well. The Young Bucks. I've never seen more incredible wrestling and more incredible tag matches than what these guys deliver. So, I mean, AEW has got some of the most talented wrestlers, male and female, that I have seen anywhere. I mean, you take the Cody Roses, the Kenny Omegas, and Adam Page is another one. I mean, there's so many of them that are just phenomenal wrestlers.
Is there anything else you would like your fans to know about you?
Well, I shared the most important thing a minute ago. Yeah, I just that I'm very thankful to all the wrestling fans, and grateful, especially for all those that have watched for over 3 decades, and been a huge fan, a Sting fan all this time, and all the new fans. This is AEW's got a much younger audience, and it seems like many of them are have an appreciation for the Stinger, and so I'm grateful for that. And I just want to say thank you to all of them. And it's been a good ride, and we'll see how long this one lasts here. But I'm having a good time here with AEW.
That's the end. Thanks for the interview.
You got it. Thank you, AJ.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the AJ Awesome Show. I would like to thank Sting for being my special guest. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you next time.